The rain came down like it had a personal grudge, pounding the earth of Woodlawn Cemetery as if trying to wash away the lies buried 6 feet under with Robert. I stood there, Ethan Hale, 42 years old and feeling every goddamn one of them. My Italian wool suit, his favorite, the one he'd bought me for our 10th anniversary, clinging to my skin like a second layer of grief. But it wasn't the cold seeping into my bones that made me stagger. It was the 4 men stepping out from under the dripping oaks, their umbrellas tilted like shields, eyes locking onto mine with a familiarity that twisted my gut. They knew Robert in ways I never had, and the secret they carried burned brighter than the thunder rolling over the Bronx skyline. Ethan, the tallest one, said, his voice slicing through the storm like a Brooklyn cop's siren. Deep, no nonsense, with that faint Jersey edge that Robert used to mock lovingly over Sunday brunches. He extended a hand gloved in black leather, but I didn't take it. I'm John. We need to talk. Robert. He wanted you to know. Before it's too late. Too late for what? The casket was already lowered. The dirt piled high. The rabbi's prayers drowned out by the deluge. My knees buckled, and I gripped the wrought iron fence bordering the plot, the metal biting cold through my palm. These strangers, handsome in that rugged, lived-in American way, faces weathered by city nights and bad decisions, weren't mourners from our life in Chelsea. They were ghosts from Robert's past, ex-lovers he'd buried deeper than his own regrets, and now they were here to unearth them all. I wanted to scream, to tell them to fuck off back to whatever dive bar or leather club they'd crawled out of, but the words stuck like phlegm in my throat. Robert Whitaker, my husband of 9 years, the man who'd whispered, "I do," under the rainbow lights of City Hall the day same-sex marriage hit New York, was gone. Cancer had eaten him from the inside out. Liver, aggressive, stage 4 by the time he let me drag him to Sloan Kettering. We'd fought it together, or so I'd thought. The chemo sessions in that sterile hellhole on York Avenue, me holding his hand while he puked bile into bedpans, our apartment on West 23rd smelling like hospital antiseptic and his fading cologne. But these men, they carried a weight in their stares that said I'd been the fool in the fairy tale, the prince who never saw the dragon in the castle. John stepped closer, rain sluicing off his umbrella onto my shoes, polished Oxfords, scuffed now from the mud. Behind him, the others fanned out. A blonde with a sailor's build and a scar snaking down his jaw, a wiry guy with glasses fogged from the humidity, clutching a worn leather journal like a lifeline, and the last, broad-shouldered with salt and pepper hair, his face all sharp angles and quiet fury. "We're not here to cause a scene," John continued, his breath visible in the chill. "Robert made us promise. The 4 of us. We were part of his life before you. College, mostly. Wild years at NYU. But this isn't about jealousy or score settling. It's about the truth he couldn't face." My heart hammered, a traitorous rhythm against my ribs. Truth? The only truth I knew was Robert's laugh echoing off our exposed brick walls, the way he'd burn pancakes on purpose just to see me smile, the quiet nights we'd lie tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets, his fingers tracing the tattoos on my back, reminders of a youth I'd left behind in the dusty oil fields of West Texas. Texas. That's where it started for me, a world away from the neon pulse of Manhattan. I'd fled Lubbock at 22, Bible Belt bruises still fresh from my father's fists and my mother's silent tears after she found the stack of Playgirl magazines under my mattress. "You're my boy, Ethan," she'd sobbed, clutching her rosary like it could exorcise the devil in me. But this ain't natural. So I hitched east, landed in the village with a duffel bag and a fake ID, bartending at a hole in the wall called the Stonewall Echo. Ironic, right? Pouring cheap whiskey for drag queens and Wall Street refugees, dodging the AIDS ghosts that still haunted the booths. That's where Robert walked in one sticky July night in 2014, the summer after Doma got gutted and the world cracked open a sliver for guys like us. He was 30, all lean muscle and easy confidence, in a faded Ramones tee and jeans that hugged his ass like they were custom. Dark hair tousled from the subway ride up from Brooklyn, green eyes that scanned the room like he owned it, until they landed on me behind the bar, wiping down a spill with a rag that smelled like stale beer. "Jameson. Neat," he said, sliding onto a stool, his voice that perfect New York gravel born in Queens, raised on diner grease and subway rumbles. Poured, our fingers brushing when I handed over the glass, and zap like a short circuit in my chest. We talked for hours after my shift, closing down the bar while Nina Simone crooned from the jukebox about feeling good. He was a graphic designer, freelancing for indie bands, living in a walk-up in Williamsburg with a cat named Sartre who hated everyone. Divorced from the closet, he joked, but his eyes darkened when he mentioned the ex who'd bailed when things got too real. By dawn, we were stumbling into his place, lips locked in the stairwell, hands fumbling with buttons like teenagers. Sex that first time was frantic. Raw, him pinning me against the peeling wallpaper, whispering filth that made my Texas drawl slip out in gasps. "Fuck, Ethan, you're killing me," he'd groan, and I'd laugh because for the first time, felt like living, not surviving. We didn't sleep. We mapped each other with mouths and tongues, the city humming outside like applause. Mornings after blurred into weeks. Coffee runs to that Vietnamese spot on Bedford, where he'd steal bites of my pho and I'd pretend to mind. Lazy afternoons in McCarran Park. His head in my lap while I read Kerouac aloud, the words twisting around us like smoke from his clove cigarettes. But Robert had shadows, even then. Late-night calls he'd take in the kitchen, voice dropping low, urgent. "It's nothing," he'd say when I asked, pulling me back to bed with that grin that could melt steel. Old friends. Ghosts. I believed him because I wanted to, hell, needed to. In a city that chewed up dreamers and spat out husks, he was my anchor. We moved in together by fall. My shitty sublet in Hell's Kitchen traded for his loft. Walls lined with his sketches. Abstract swirls of color that he said captured the chaos of love. Christmas that year. Under the twinkling lights of the tree we'd chopped ourselves from a lot in Jersey. He dropped to one knee with a ring, simple platinum band, engraved with always, in every shade. I said yes through tears, the kind that taste like salt and freedom. Our wedding was small, fierce, rooftop in Brooklyn, officiated by a queer rabbi with a mohawk. Guests a mix of my bar buddies and his artsy crowd. Vows exchanged as the sun dipped behind the bridges, his hand steady in mine. "Ethan Hale," he murmured. "You're the color I didn't know I was missing." We honeymooned in the Keys, driving a rented Mustang down Highway 1, windows down, Springsteen blasting Born to Run. Stops at dive motels with neon signs flickering like promises. Nights on the beach where we'd fuck under the stars. Sand gritty between us, his body arching like a wave. It was perfect. The kind of love songs lie about, but we were living. Arguments over whose turn it was to do laundry. Make-up sex that shook the headboard. Quiet pride when we held hands on the subway without a flinch. Yet cracks spiderwebbed early. Robert's freelance gigs dried up post-recession. He took a soul-sucking ad job at a midtown firm, coming home hollow-eyed, scotch on his breath. I'd find him staring at his sketch pad, pencil snapped in frustration. What's eating you? I'd ask, rubbing his shoulders knotted like ropes. Just the grind, he'd mutter, but his phone buzzed more. Texts he deleted quick. Trips to client meetings in Jersey that stretched into overnights. I chalked it up to stress, the city's relentless churn. We were married now. That meant trust, right? Blind, stupid trust. Then, 3 years in, the first real storm hit. We were at a pride after-party in the village, bodies slick with sweat and glitter, when some guy, tall, tattooed, vaguely familiar, sidled up, clapping Robert on the back. Whitaker, fuck, man, it's been ages. Remember that weekend in the Pines? Robert's face drained, hand tightening on my waist like a vice. Ancient history, he said, voice tight, steering me away. But the seed was planted, doubt blooming like kudzu in my gut. Who was he before me? What pieces had he sanded down to fit our life? Back at the funeral, John's words yanked me from the memory, rain blurring his features into a smear of regret. He loved you, Ethan, more than any of us. But love like his came with baggage. Heavy shit from back when we were all kids figuring it out. The blonde, Mark. He introduced himself, voice like cracked asphalt, nodded, scar pulling tight. NYU, 98. Dorm parties that lasted till dawn. Robert was the spark. The one who made us brave. Brave. The word hung, heavy as the mud on my shoes. They'd known him when AIDS was still a death sentence whispered in clinics. When Stonewall was memory not monument. Exes, sure. But brothers in arms too, the kind of bond forged in fire. I swallowed, throat raw. Why now? Why here? The wiry one, David, pushed up his glasses, journal tucked under his arm like contraband. Because he asked us to. Before the end. Said if he couldn't, we would. The secret is not what you think. Or maybe it is. Chris, the last, with eyes like storm clouds, stepped forward, umbrella dipping low. Betrayal, Ethan. But not the kind that ends in hate. The kind that explains why he held on so tight. My pulse roared. The rain a curtain hiding the scattering mourners. Our friends from the gallery openings. The yoga moms from our building. Oblivious to the apocalypse unfolding by Grave 47. They led me to a cluster of benches under a sagging pavilion. Water pooling on the slats like tears. John pulled a flask from his coat. Good scotch. Peaty and sharp, and passed it. I took a swig. Fire blooming in my chest. Start from the beginning, I rasped. All of it, and they did. Voices weaving through the downpour, unraveling the man I thought I knew. It started in a dorm room on Washington Square, fall of '97, when Robert Whitaker, 18 and terrified, kissed John under the glow of a lava lamp and shattered his own world. John's story spilled out like a confession in a dimly lit booth, the kind you'd find in a Soho speakeasy after last call, hushed, halting, laced with the regret of roads not taken. He was Robert's first, the golden boy from Jersey who'd majored in philosophy because, what else do you study when life's one big question mark? 19. Lanky with a mop of curls that Robert used to tug like reins. They met in a freshman seminar on Whitman Leaves of Grass. All that, I sing the body electric shit that hit too close to home for kids hiding crushes behind flannel shirts. Study sessions turned to stolen glances. Then hands brushing under the seminar table. Sparks jumping like faulty wiring. First time was in the library stacks, John said. Eyes distant, rain pattering on the pavilion roof like impatient fingers. Third floor, poetry section. He smelled like Irish spring and anxiety. Pushed me against the shelves, books digging into my back. Eliot, Pound, all that modernist angst. We didn't say a word. Just did it. His voice cracked on the last, and I saw it. Two boys fumbling in the shadows of academia, hearts pounding louder than the A-train rumbling underground. Robert, raised Catholic in a Queens row house where his dad fixed copiers and his mom baked enough Zeppole to feed the block, had never even jerked off to a guy before. But John, he was the key turning in the lock, the door creaking open to a life Robert both craved and feared. They were inseparable that semester, crashing lectures on Foucault, chain-smoking Marlboros on the quad while dreaming of escaping to the Pines or Fire Island, where men could love without the side-eye from campus security. Summers, John dragged Robert to his family's shore house in Asbury Park. Boardwalk cotton candy and furtive blowjobs in the dune grass, Springsteen thumping from boomboxes like a heartbeat. He was electric, John murmured, flask making the rounds again. Wrote me poems, bad ones, full of metaphors about oceans and storms. Said I was his harbor, but harbors have tides, and by sophomore year, the pull of secrecy dragged them under. Robert's roommate walked in once, early morning, sheets tangled, the air thick with sex and shame. Whispers spread, fag, queer, the slurs slinging like dodgeballs in the halls. That's when Mark entered the frame, the blonde with the scar, a Marine brat from Norfolk, Virginia, who'd enlisted at 17 to piss off his Bible-thumping folks, only to get spit out after a psych eval flagged his deviant tendencies. NYU on the GI Bill, studying engineering but sketching ships in the margins. His body a roadmap of bar fights and regrets. He met Robert at a dive off campus, the Kettle of Fish, during a Dylan night harp wailing over pints of Guinness. Robert was nursing a breakup pint, John having bailed for a straight girl to appease his old man. Mark slid in, all broad shoulders and quiet drawl. Looks like you need a lifeline, he said, and just like that, they were tangled in the bathroom stall, Mark's calloused hands mapping Robert's slim frame like a blueprint. He was broken when I found him, Mark rumbled, his scar twitching as he spoke. Souvenir from a bottle smashed over his head in a Norfolk back alley, courtesy of a John who regretted his choices. John ghosted him, left him spinning. I was just passing through, but Robert, he stuck. We built shit together, model boats in my dorm, tiny sails from notebook paper. Talked about sailing the world, away from all the bullshit. Their affair burned hot and fast. Weekends in Mark's beat-up Chevy, cruising the Jersey Turnpike to motels where they'd fuck till the neon buzzed out, Robert's moans muffled in pillows. Mark taught him resilience, the art of taking a hit and standing taller, lessons from boot camp that Robert absorbed like gospel. But Mark shipped out again by spring, a temp gig at the docks, leaving Robert with a silver chain necklace and a hollow in his chest. David picked up the thread next, the wiry intellectual with the journal English Lit major, Jewish kid from the Upper West Side whose parents owned a deli on Amsterdam that slung the best pastrami this side of Katz's. He and Robert collided in a theater workshop, staging Angels in America, Kushner's epic of love and loss amid the plague years. David played Pryor, ethereal and doomed. Robert was Belize, the nurse with fire in his veins. Rehearsals ran late, the Black Box Theater on Lafayette a cocoon of spotlights and subtext. He kissed me after opening night, David said, flipping open his journal to a yellowed page. Ink faded but fierce. Robert's scrawl, A love letter disguised as stage directions. Backstage. Amid the props, fake four stands, hospital gowns. Said I made him believe in redemption. Their romance was cerebral, laced with midnight debates over Camus and cocktails at White Horse Tavern, where Dylan Thomas had drunk himself dead. David introduced Robert to the literary underground poetry slams in Alphabet City, where words were weapons against the darkness. They'd hole up in David's walk-in closet apartment, reading aloud till dawn, bodies entwining like plot twists. But David had his own demons. A family expecting him to marry the girl from Temple, a thesis advisor sniffing out his distractions. When Robert pushed for more, "Let's move to the village. Declare us," David folded, citing deadlines and duty. "I broke him," he admitted, voice thin as newsprint. Told him it was a phase, like we were characters in our own bad novel. By junior year, Robert was a vortex, pulling in Chris, the broad-shouldered artist from Chicago, transplanted via a scholarship to Pratt but crashing NYU parties for the scene. Chris painted murals in abandoned warehouses, bold strokes of bodies in ecstasy and agony, colors screaming what words couldn't. They met at an art crawl in Dumbo. Robert wandering Brooklyn bridges buzzed on cheap red. Chris daubed in paint up to his elbows. "He saw my canvas," Chris said, his voice a low rumble like Lake Michigan waves. "A triptych of lovers, fractured and whole. Called it honest. Next thing, we're in his dorm, my hands in his hair, his on my easel, smearing paint like it was blood." Chris was the wild card, their fling a blaze of creativity. All-nighters in lofts where Robert modeled nude, body arched under harsh bulbs, Chris's brush capturing the curve of his hip, the vulnerability in his throat. They traveled cheap, hitchhiking to the Hamptons, crashing on beaches where they'd make love to the crash of surf, dreaming of galleries in Soho that would never hang their truths. But Chris was nomadic, soul itchy for the road. By graduation, he vanished west, leaving Robert a canvas, half-finished, raw with a note, "You're the masterpiece. Finish yourself." The four of them orbited Robert post-college. Exes turned uneasy allies in a city that demanded you pick sides. John in law school at Fordham, burying feelings in case briefs. Mark welding at the shipyards, salt air scouring his scars. David clerking at a bookstore on Bleecker, annotating margins with unspoken longing. Chris bouncing gigs as a tattoo artist in the East Village, ink needling regrets into strangers' skin. Robert, he hustled design jobs, crashing on couches, the wild boy tamed but chafing. They'd reconvene at dive bars, the Phoenix on 2nd Avenue, shots of tequila chasing what-ifs. "We were his safety net," John said, "but he was the one keeping us from falling. Then I came along, the Texas transplant crashing their fragile orbit." Robert never mentioned them, not by name, not in the dark hours when ghosts should whisper. Our life was a new chapter, or so he framed it. Brunches at Sarabeth's, gallery hops in Chelsea, the slow build to vows that sealed us against the world. But listening now, under that dripping pavilion, I saw the fault lines. The late calls, check-ins from John, post-breakup from his sham marriage. The Jersey trips, Mark's bachelor pad, beers and boat talk masking the ache. David's journal, mailed care packages of inscribed books, words like lifelines. Chris's texts, photos of murals in Portland, captions reading, "Miss the canvas. Why hide it?" I demanded, voice cracking like thunder. The flask was empty, my buzz souring into nausea. I was his husband. We shared everything. Fears, fights, The fucking flu. Mark leaned in, scar silver in the low light. Because Robert thought you deserved clean. No baggage from the old life. He said you were his reset button. Reset. The word landed like a slap. Our marriage, with its pottery barn dishes and joint tax returns, built on erasure. David nodded, journal closing with a snap. But the secret is bigger, ties us all. He couldn't tell you without unraveling everything. Chris glanced at the grave, mud swallowing the last of the lilies I'd tossed in. It started unraveling last year. When the pain hit, pain. The first symptom, Robert brushing it off as too many IPAs. Then the yellowing skin, the weight drop that turned his cheeks hollow. Diagnosis in February, hepatocellular carcinoma, fed by years of heavy drinking, the kind that started in college dorms, escalated in those post-grad benders with these men. He called us first, John confessed. Before you. Said he needed to make amends. Amends. The word hung, heavy as the ozone before lightning. While I'd been Googling oncologists and meal prepping kale smoothies, Robert had been meeting them, secret coffees in nondescript diners off Times Square, hands clasped across Formica like in some gritty Scorsese flick. We were his confessional, Mark added. The ones who'd seen the worst of him. The lies, the hookups to numb the fear. Lies. Plural. My stomach twisted. What lies? Pressed, though part of me screamed to run. Hail a cab back to the empty apartment where his side of the closet gaped like a wound. David cleared his throat, the sound wet. The affairs. Early on. With you. Not many, but enough to gut you. Affairs. The room, the pavilion tilted, rain a roar in my ears. 3 years in, when the ad job ground him down. 5 years, during that work trip to L.A. John with his steady lawyer hands, Mark's rough comfort, David's whispered poetry, Chris's artistic fire. He was scared, John said, of losing himself in the domestic. Thought monogamy was a cage. Cage. Our life, our love, a prison? I laughed, bitter bark echoing off the benches. And you? All of you knew. They nodded, shame etching deeper lines. We stopped it, Chris said fiercely. Told him to come clean or lose you for good. He chose you. Always. But the secret festered, a tumor of its own. As Robert's body failed, so did his resolve. Chemo rounds. He'd slip away to their meetings, not for sex, but salvation. Sharing stories, laughing over old wounds, planning the end. He wrote letters, David said, patting the journal. For each of us. And one for you. The big one. My breath hitched. Letters. The kind that rewrite histories. The rain eased to a drizzle, sky bruising purple over the headstones. Where is it? I whispered. John reached into his coat, pulling an envelope cream stock, sealed with red wax, my name in Robert's looping script. Read it alone, he urged. But know this, we didn't come to destroy. To honor. He loved you fierce, Ethan. Flawed as he was. Clutched it, paper damp but solid. A lifeline or noose. The men stood, umbrellas snapping open like final curtains. We're here if you need, Mark rumbled. No strings. They faded into the mist, silhouettes against the wrought iron gates, leaving me with the grave, the letter, and a heart cracking open like thunder. That night, back in our apartment, the one with the creaky radiator and view of the Empire State, I sat on the leather couch we'd christened with champagne on wedding night, envelope trembling in my lap. The place smelled of him still. Vetiver cologne on the throw pillows, half-read New Yorkers stacked by his armchair. I slit the seal, unfolding pages dense with his hand. Slanted, urgent, ink bleeding where tears had smudged. Ethan, my love, my horizon, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And the rain's probably falling like it did that day in the Keys when we promised forever. I fucked up. Royally. The affairs. God, I hate typing that word. They weren't about you. Or lack. About me. Scared shitless boy in a man's body, chasing ghosts to feel alive. John taught me to feel. Mark. To fight. David. To dream. Chris. To create. They were my youth. My fractures. You, my whole. Tears blurred the lines, but I read on. His words a bridge over the chasm. The cancer he'd known hints years back. Ignored the warnings in college binges. The hangovers that lingered. The exes, they'd confronted him, forced the tests, held his hand through the first scopes when pride kept him from me. They saved me, he wrote, by making me face the monster. And you, Ethan, you were the light pulling me through. Every night I crawled back to your bed, guilty and grateful. It was your face I saw. Not theirs, but the secret, the heart of it, unfolded in the final pages. A pact. Robert had reconnected with them not just for absolution, but action. Each man carried scars from those wild years. John's sham marriage ended in divorce, alimony bleeding him dry. Mark's PTSD flaring after September 11th's echo in the shipyards. David's writer's block, manuscripts gathering dust. Chris's addictions, needles traded for brushes too late. Robert had funneled money, our savings, freelance scraps, into their lives anonymously. Therapy for Mark, a loan for John's firm, publication fees for David, rehab for Chris. They were my debts, he confessed. Paying them freed me to love you clean. The climax hit like chemo. The betrayal wasn't the flings, but the hidden support, the exes as his secret family, woven into our marriage without a thread to me. He'd planned to tell, post-remission, but the cancer lied, staging its coup. Forgive me, cowboy, he ended, Texas twang in the ink. For the shadows. Ride on without them. You're the sun I chased all my life. I folded the letter, chest heaving, sobs racking like dry heaves. Betrayal, yes, sharp as a switchblade, but woven with grace, the kind that redeems. Robert, flawed architect of our chaos, had built a mosaic from shards. Dawn crept over the skyline, gilding the letter gold. I wasn't whole, but maybe healing started here, in the quiet after the storm. Weeks blurred into a haze of paperwork and ghosts, the kind that haunt not with moans but mundane echoes. Robert's coffee mug on the dish rack, chipped from a camping trip in the Adirondacks where we'd argued over tent stakes and made up under a meteor shower. I quit my job at the ad agency. Copywriting taglines for luxury condos felt profane now, peddling dreams when mine lay cold in Woodlawn. Days stretched in the apartment, me pacing the hardwood in socks, replaying the letter like a scratched vinyl. Forgiveness? It wasn't a switch flipped. It was erosion, slow grind of river on stone. The ex's numbers burned in my phone, John's, with its 201 area code. Mark's, blunt and unlisted. I hadn't called. Not yet. But Manhattan has a way of conspiring, shrinking the world to 6 degrees. It happened at a reading in Brooklyn. One of David's launches, a slim volume of poems titled Fractured Light, published on the dime Robert had slipped him years back. I went uninvited, drawn by masochism or curiosity, slipping into the back of the powerhouse arena amid hipsters nursing IPAs and the scent of fresh ink. David on stage, voice steady as he read. Lines about lovers lost to the tide, bodies electric but ephemeral. In the shadow of towers, he intoned, we built cathedrals of flesh, only to watch them crumble under indifferent skies. The crowd murmured, but I heard Robert, his laugh in the cadence, his green eyes in the metaphors. After, in the signing line snaking past indie press tables, our eyes met. David's pen paused mid-autograph, face paling under the Edison bulbs. Ethan, not a question. I nodded, throat tight, clutching a copy I'd grabbed like armor. Beautiful, I managed. He'd have loved this. We stepped outside. Fort Greene air crisp with fall bite, leaves skittering like secrets across the sidewalk. He lit a cigarette, offering one. I took it, first drag acrid and alive. The money, I said, exhaling smoke like confession. From the letter. It worked. David nodded, ash flicking into the gutter. Yeah. Got me out of the bookstore rut. But it's tainted now. Every stanza feels like borrowed time. We walked, aimless as exes ourselves, past brownstones glowing warm against the dusk. He told me about the night Robert showed up at his door, gaunt from a cold that wasn't pre-diagnosis, but shadows lengthening. Sat on my fire escape, chain smoking, spilling it all. The flings with you early on, he cried. Ethan said he woke up next to John once, post-argument with you over bills, and hated the man in the mirror, John. The name landed soft, not knife-sharp anymore. David stubbed his smoke. We didn't encourage it. Hell, we envied you the stability, the ring. Robert with you? He glowed. But the cancer stripped him raw, made him claw for every scrap of past to make sense of the end. Envy. The word unlocked something, a valve hissing pressure. I'd pictured them as villains in my grief flick, scheming in smoky backrooms. But here was David, slight frame hunched against the wind, eyes haunted by his own what-ifs. We ended at a dive on DeKalb, neon open sign buzzing like a hive, sliding into a booth scarred by initials. Shots of Jameson, neat, Robert's drink. Stories flowed then, unbidden. The time in college when Chris inked a phoenix on Robert's ribs after a bad breakup, needle buzzing like Judgment Day, Mark teaching him to box in a Hell's Kitchen gym, gloves thwacking pads as therapy for Robert's repressed rage. He punched like he loved, Mark had said, per David. All in, no holding back. By closing, buzzed and loose, I asked the question gnawing since the funeral. The pact. What exactly did he make you promise? David swirled the dregs, ice clinking like bones. To watch over you. If things went south. Not creepily, we're not stalkers. Just be there. Because he knew you'd blame yourself, the affairs, the secrets. Said you were too hard on your own heart. Watch over me. The idea chafed, paternalistic, but beneath it hummed care, the kind Robert orchestrated from his hospital bed, morphine-dazed but scheming. I laughed, hollow. Like a queer guardian angel squad? David grinned. First real one. Something like that. Faulty halos. All of us. We parted with a hug. Awkward. Backslapping. the scent of his wool coat like old books and resolve. Back home, subway rattling like my thoughts. I texted John, "Coffee? Neutral ground." His reply pinged instant. "Dean and DeLuca, 10 a.m. My treat. Neutral ground. Midtown's glass jungle. Tourists gawking at the Flatiron while locals dodged steam vents. John arrived early, suited sharp, partner at a firm specializing in LGBTQ rights cases, tie pin glinting like a badge. Over lattes and croissants flaky as fresh starts, he dove in, no preamble. I was the worst for him. The one that lingered. First love's curse. He called it the echo that fades but never dies. Their split post-college had been brutal. John proposing a pause to chase heteronormalcy, dating a sorority girl named Becky with ringlets and expectations. Robert, shattered, dove into the scene circuit parties in the meatpacking, where bodies blurred into oblivion. He called me once, 3 a.m., from some after-hours in the Bowery. John said, stirring sugar like stirring silt. Sobbing. Said he'd fucked a stranger bear. No regrets. Just emptiness. The call that seeded the pact. Maybe the recklessness born of heartbreak. When Robert met me, John was mid-divorce, Becky's facade crumbling under his wandering eyes. I reached out. Congratulatory brunch after your engagement. He shut me down cold. Ethan's it, man. End of story. But I saw the fear. The boy who kissed me in the stacks, still there, terrified of cages. Cages again. I sipped, foam bitter on my tongue. And the affair? With me married. John's jaw tightened, suit creasing. One night. 4 years in. You two fighting over his hours at the agency, he came to my place, rain-soaked, ranting about being trapped. We talked, then. More. Woke up hating ourselves. I told him to go home, fight for you. He did, one night. The specificity stung less than the why. Not desire, but desperation. A man drowning, grasping at familiar driftwood. Why keep in touch? I asked. John met my eyes, steady. Because he needed witnesses. To his mess, his growth. We were the only ones who'd seen both. Witnesses. The word reframed them, not thieves of my husband, but mirrors reflecting his evolution. John paid the bill, slipping a card for his pro bono line. If the estate gets messy. And we parted with a nod, the city swallowing him into its arteries. Emboldened, I messaged Mark, beer? Williamsburg Bridge. His reply, under the arches, dusk. Bring your A game. Dusk painted the East River orange, gulls wheeling like punctuation. Mark waited on a bench, flannel over thermals, thermos of something strong in hand. Ex-Marine turned Union rep at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. His presence grounded the air, earth, and engine oil. We walked the bridge's pedestrian path, wind whipping off the water, Manhattan's lights winking like distant fires. Boxing, he started. No hello needed. That's how he grieved us. After each split, mine included, he'd show up at Gleason's, gloves on, pounding the bag till his knuckles split. Gleason's, Dumbo's holy ground for fighters, where Ali trained. Robert, in sweats and wraps, channeling fury into jabs. Taught him a combo once, Mark said, demonstrating shadow punches, broad fists cutting air. Left hook for the pain, uppercut for the fight back. Their affair? A weekend in '03. Mark on leave from welding, Robert fresh off a bad client gig. Picked him up in the Chevy. Drove to the Cape Cheap Motel. Lobster rolls from a shack. Fucked like it was war. Made love like peace treaty. War and peace. Tolstoy in tattoos. As we reached the Manhattan side, skyline sprawling, Mark paused. Thermos passed, bourbon. Smooth burn. The cancer call? He waited till after your vow renewal. That rooftop thing, 5th anniversary, said it reminded him why he chose picket fences over open seas. Vow renewal, our whim. String lights and sangria on the Chelsea High Line. Friends toasting our boring bliss. I'd felt invincible. He'd been plotting survival. Betrayal's a two-way street, Mark grunted. He hid from you to protect. But we pushed group text chain. Brutal love. Tell him or lose him. Group text. The casual domesticity of it twisted the knife anew. My husband, texting ex-lovers while I slept inches away. But Mark's eyes held no triumph, only the wear of a man who'd welded his own hull patched. He left me the boat, he added gruffly. The one we built model of. Full size now, in dry dock. Said sail it for him, a boat. Robert's dream, sketched in margins, now seaworthy legacy. We hugged brief, bone-crushing before he headed downtown, broad back fading into the crowd. Last, Chris, the drifter. I found him via Instagram at Innomadchi. Murals splashed across global walls. DM. Tattoo? Something for him. Reply, my shop. Less. Bring beer. The parlor on Orchard hummed with needles and hip-hop. Walls papered in flash sheets of skulls and roses. Chris, sleeves rolled, salt-pepper beard framing a grin. Sit. What we inking? I described it. A horizon line, sun chasing storms, waves curling like lovers' limbs. His needle bit skin on my forearm, steady buzz a meditation. Between outlines, stories, their last tryst, 6 years into my marriage. Robert in LA for design conference, actually crashing Chris's gallery show in Silver Lake, high on the validation of seeing his ex's name in lights. We holed up in the Hollywood Hills, Chris said, wiping ink. Airbnb with a view of the sign. Painted him nude, facing the dawn. Then bed, all night. Morning, he bolted. Called from the airport, Ethan's my North Star. Don't let me forget, North Star. Guiding light amid the drift. The ink set, skin raised red, a map of grief etched permanent. The secret's in the art, Chris said, wrapping my arm. Robert commissioned pieces for you, sketches, hidden in his studio. For after, studio, our spare room, canvases stacked like tombstones. That night, I unearthed them, portraits of me sleeping, laughing, fierce in argument. Notes tucked in frames, your fire, my forge. The exes hadn't stolen. They'd illuminated, fragments piecing the mosaic. Climax brewed slow, a storm gathering. It broke at Robert's memorial, our doing, a jazz club in the village, sax wailing like sirens. All four came, suits traded for leather jackets, blending with the crowd of painters and poets. Toasts flowed, to Robert's laugh, his flawed fire. Then, private, in the alley behind, cig smoke curling. The full secret, John said, circle tight. Not just amends. He had a will codicil. Leaves you the apartment, but us, custodians. For the foundation. Foundation, David explained. Robert's quiet project, Seeded years back. Whitaker Light, scholarship fund for queer kids from red states, Texas to Ohio, covering NYU tuitions, therapy, pride trips. Seeded with his 401k scraps. Grown by anonymous boosts, the client bonuses I'd teased him about. The exes, board members, in shadows till now. He wanted you to run it, Mark said. With us. Legacy, not ghost. Betrayal transmuted. Not theft, but trust deferred. I laughed, tears hot. The bastard. Always one step ahead. Hugs all around. Bonds forging in the night air. Not lovers, not rivals, family, patchwork and true. Winter clamped down on the city like a vice. Snowplows growling through Chelsea at dawn, turning our street into a slushy gauntlet of yellow cabs and hurried dog walkers. The apartment felt vast now, echoes bouncing off the high ceilings where Robert had hung his mobiles, wire and glass, spinning lazy in the drafts. I'd started sorting his things. Sketchpads yellowing with age, filled with faces mine, mostly, but earlier ones too. Faint outlines of John's curls, Mark's jawline. Each page a stab, but I pressed on. Boxing donations for the Ali Forney Center, keeping the ones that whispered rather than screamed. The foundation paperwork arrived mid-December, thick stack from John's firm, bylaws, tax IDs, Robert's scrawled mission statement taped inside. For the boys who hide in plain sight, light their way home. Meetings began tentative, bi-weekly in a conference room at John's office overlooking Bryant Park. Iced rink skaters twirling below like oblivious ballerinas. John chaired, all pinstripes and agendas. Mark handled ops, his union-honed efficiency cutting through legalese like a riveter's torch. David wordsmithed grants, prose poetic enough to sway donors. Chris designed the logo, a stylized horizon, sun-piercing clouds. Me, I was the heart, or so they said, the one who'd lived Robert's endgame. You're the why, David murmured once, over takeout tie after hours, steam fogging the windows. He built this for the Ethans of the world, Texas runaways with fire in their veins. But fire needs fuel, and mine sputtered. Nights alone, I traced the tattoo Chris inked, horizon line now scarred with healing itch, and wonder, was this absolution or obligation? The affairs lingered, specters in the sheets, images of Robert's body arching under strangers' hands, my husband's moans for other men. Therapy helped. A queer shrink in Gramercy with a beard like a wizard's and zero bullshit. Grief's a thief, Ethan. Steals the narrative. Rewrite it. I tried, journaling feverishly. Lists of Robert's kindnesses. The time he drove through a blizzard to fetch me from JFK after a family funeral back home. Mom's cancer mirroring his. The surprise weekend in Savannah. Ghost tour and gumbo, where he proposed renewing vows again. Just cause. Still, conflict simmered. First fracture at the inaugural board retreat. Upstate cabin in the Catskills. February frost etching the pines like lace. John's idea. Team build. No suits. We arrived snow-dusted. Provisions in tow. Mark's chili simmering on the wood stove. David's wine stash. Chris's sketch pads. Beers cracked. Stories looped back to '98, that infamous spring break in Fort Lauderdale. Robert renting a convertible. All five piling in for debauchery. Beach volleyball turning to grope fests. Motel rooms swapped like cards. Laughter flowed, but midway, buzzed on craft IPAs, Mark dropped the bomb. Remember the fight, John? You and him, over that twink from the club. Punched him square. First blood. John stiffened, firelight carving shadows on his face. Ancient. Drop it. But Mark, bourbon loose, pressed, nah. Explains the pact. Robert said that bruise made him see family wasn't blood. It was choice. The room iced over. I froze, mug halfway to lips. Pact. David jumped in, placating. You. We swore, after the AIDS scare 99, group test negative but freaked, to have each other's backs. No matter what, it's the plague word, italicized in my mind. Robert, tested post a risky hookup, waiting in clinics with these men, hands linked in fluorescent hell. He never told me, I said, voice small. Chris nodded, poking the fire. Didn't want to taint the clean with you. But it bound us, exes or not. Bound. The revelation cracked something, resentment bubbling. So I was the outsider? The vanilla life he hid this from. Voices overlapped, John's calm. No. The pinnacle, Mark's gruff, the goal. But it escalated, words flying like embers. You got the ring, Mark barked at me, half joking. We got the wreckage, John snapped back. Wreckage you helped build. Sleeping with him post-breakups. David tried mediation, quoting Auden. We must love one another or die. But Chris, ever the artist, hurled a log into the flames, sparks exploding. Bullshit. We all betrayed him by letting fear win. Ethan, you were the win he chased. I stormed out, boots crunching virgin snow, breath fogging in the black. The lake frozen solid, stars pricking the void like accusations. Betrayal layered. Not just Robert's flings, but there's the pact excluding me, the support system parallel to our marriage. Footsteps crunched behind. John, coatless, shivering. Hey. That wasn't. It was. I cut in, turning. You four? His real family. I was the front. He stepped close. Jersey direct. Wrong. You were the future. We were the prologue. Prologue. The word thawed a fraction. We talked till numb, his divorce details. The kid from it. Now 10 and questioning dad's friend at soccer games. Vulnerability cracked the ice. John's fear of repeating Robert's patterns. Hiding love till it hemorrhaged. Back inside. Apologies mumbled over chili reheated. The air thick but mending. That night, bunks creaking. I dreamed of Robert young, dormlit, kissing John with desperate hunger. Woke sweating, but not hating. Progress, jagged. Spring unfurled tentative. Cherry blossoms dusting Washington Square like confetti from a half-remembered parade. The foundation launched. First grants to a Lubbock teen fleeing conversion camp. Echoes of my youth. Donors trickled, queer philanthropists from Robert's design network. Moved by the pitch. Light for the hidden. But climax loomed. A donor gala at the New York Historical Society. Gilded halls. Chandeliers dripping light like liquid gold. I am Seed. Suit sharp. Voice steady. Toasts to Robert's vision. Slides of his sketches projected large. The X's in attendance. Tuxed and transformed. John charming board chairs. Mark schmoozing unions. David reciting original pieces. Chris unveiling a mural. Our horizon. Writ large on canvas. Success hummed. Champagne flutes clinking. But tension coiled. Midway. A donor, Silver Fox. Hedge fund slick. Cornered me by the bar. Whitaker's ex. Right? Heard he had quite the roster. Colorful legacy. The words slithered. laced with insinuation. I stiffened, retort rising, but Chris materialized, arms slung casual. Roster? Nah. Family. Bigger story. Diffused. But the seed gossip, the city's venom, took root. Later, in a side room, it erupted. Mark, overhearing whispers, confronted John. This your crowd? Loose lips on our boy. John fired back. My donors. Our future. Suck it up. Voices rose, echoing off marble. Accusations of exploitation. John leveraging Robert's name for billables. Mark strong-arming labor ties. Me, the grieving widow cashing in. I intervened, heart pounding. Stop. This is what killed him, fear of the mess. Silence fell, heavy. David broke it, voice soft. The real betrayal? We let it fester. Like with him. Confession circle. John admitted padding the foundation's legal fees. Guilt money. Mark confessed relapsing on painkillers post a yard accident. Hiding from us. Chris, a recent hookup with a donor's assistant. Just to feel. Me, the kicker. I'd burned one of Robert's sketches in rage. Ashes in the Hudson. Tears flowed, raw as the gala's gloss cracked. He'd hate this, I sobbed. Us tearing at the seams. Huddle close. Hands linked like in that 99 clinic, pact renewed. Inclusive now. For Robert, John whispered. And us. The night salvaged. Gala ending in applause. But the confrontation lingered. A scar strengthening the tissue. Summer heat wave baked the city. Asphalt shimmering like mirage. I visited the boat with Mark. Launched finally. Christened Horizon's End. Cutting wakes on the Hudson. Wind in our hair. He at the tiller. Me coiling lines. He'd grin ear to ear. Mark yelled over the spray. Say we look like pirates. Laughter bubbled. Free. David and I co-wrote a grant essay. Words flowing like old lovers. Chris inked a group piece. Pack tattoo. Tiny horizons on wrists. John handled my mom's estate call. Her passing quiet. Cancer's encore pro bono. Then dinner where I came out to my brother over FaceTime. Voice steady thanks to their chorus. But the deepest dive. Solo trip to the Keys. Anniversary echo. Alone on the beach where we'd vowed. Waves lapping like Robert's breath. I scattered ashes, not his, but the burned sketch's remnants. Symbolic release. Flawed fucker, I whispered to the tide. I see you now. Peace. Tentative. Bloomed, not erasure, but embrace. Back north. The X's waited not as shadows, but scaffolding. The secret. Once poison, now potion. Robert's love. Vast as the skyline. Encompassing all. Fall circled back. Leaves turning the high line into a runway of rust and gold. The air crisp with the promise of change, or at least, that's the romantic gloss I'd slap on it in therapy notes. The foundation hit stride. 10 scholars funded. First cohort arriving at NYU with duffels and dreams. Their orientation speeches echoing Robert's dorm confessions. Fear turned to fire. We hosted a welcome barbecue in Prospect Park. The X's grilling brats and stories. Kids wide-eyed at tales of Stonewall survival and circuit party survival. One boy, from Oklahoma dust, clutched my arm post-toast. Mr. Hail. It's home. Home. The word lodged. Warm coal in my chest. Robert's gift. Rippling outward. But humanism demands depth. Not just hallmark bows. The undercurrent pulled. Testing resolve. John's firm hit a snag. Major donor bailed on a rights case. Whispers of scandal from the gala gossip mill. They're saying Robert's life was a punchline. He vented over whiskey at the Dead Rabbit. Financial District's Irish Den. Peat smoke curling like worries. Affairs. Exes crawling out. Makes us look like a soap opera. Not saviors. I swirled my neat. Ice-clinking judgment. Let him talk. We know the truth. But doubt gnawed. Was this legacy or liability? That night, insomnia gripped. I pored over Robert's letter again. Lines blurring. Flawed as he was. Flawed. Us too. The board's fractures mended but scarred. Ready to split under pressure. Conflict peaked unannounced. A donor email chain leaked to page 6. Whitaker Foundation? Charity or closet cleanse? Snide jabs at the ex-boyfriend brigade. Implying grift. Affairs as origin myth. Phones blew. John's voicemails from panicked backers. Mark's texts. Fury caps. Sue the bastards. Crisis meeting in my apartment. Now hours. Ghosts friendlier. Pizza boxes and laptops sprawled. Tempers flared. Chris wanted a countermural. Public art bomb on the leaks publisher. David drafted op-eds. Eloquent rage. Mark paced. Fists clenched like Gleason's bags. John. Ever strategist. Proposed settlement, quiet payout. Gag order. Preserve the work, he urged. I snapped. Voice echoing off brick. Preserve? This is erasure. Again. Like Robert hid you from me. The room stilled. Eyes on me, accuser turned accused. What? David breathed. Ethan. No, I cut. Rising. Letter slapping the coffee table. The secret wasn't just the affairs or the fund. It was the hiding. His rocks. Kept parallel to my life. And now, protecting the image over the mess. That's not honor. That's fear. Silence thrummed. Heavy as a dropped mic. John leaned forward. Tie loosened. You're right. We default to closets, old habit. But Robert. He broke it with you. Broke it. The admission hung. Catalyst. Chris stood first. Sketching frantic on a napkin. Fractured figures. Linking arms. Then we own it. All of it. Gala 2.0, the full story. No filters. Murmurs built to consensus. Risky. Raw. But true. Press release drafted that night. The Whitaker Light Foundation. Born of love's complexities. Essay co-signed. Voices weaving. John's legal lens on secrecy's cost. Mark's grit on survival. David's poetry on redemption. Chris's art on visibility. Mine, The Widow's Bridge. Robert Whitaker loved fiercely, faultily. His exes, not scandals, but sentinels. Together, we light paths he paved in shadow. The relaunch event, reimagined gala at the Stonewall Inn, historic cradle, drew crowds, activists, alums, press hungry for authenticity over spin. Stage set humble. Bar stools circled. Mics hot. Opened. Voice steady. Robert wasn't saint or sinner. Human. As queer as they come, wild youth. Deep regrets. Love that spanned decades. Then each spoke. John on first kisses and legal fights for the right to them. Mark on battles internal and external. PTSD entwined with pride. David reciting a poem for Robert. Electric body. Fading song. Chris unveiling tattoos on live models, horizons for the scholars. Me closing. The secret? There was none. Just life. Betrayals turned to bonds. Flaws forged to strength. Applause thundered. Not polite but primal, catharsis shared. Donors recommitted. Doubled down. Media spun redemption arcs. Page 6 eating crow. But the true climax? Private. Post-party. In the back room amid empty bottles and confetti. A scholar approached. Teen from rural Georgia. Sir, your story. It's mine. The hiding. The exes who stayed. Makes me brave. Brave. Robert's spark. Amplified. Resolution settled soft. Humanistic hue. Months on. The foundation thrived, 20 grantees. Partnerships with GLSEN. A mural by Chris on our building's facade. Personal tides shifted. I dated tentative. A barista with a laugh like Robert's but eyes all his own. No rush. Just openness. John mentored the kid from his marriage. Coming out talks over diner fries. Mark sailed the horizon's end with AA buddies. Sober wakes. David published a memoir. Prologue to light. Dedication. For RW and the men who held the pen. Chris opened a youth art co-op in the Bronx. Needles trading ink for hope. Thanksgiving. We gathered bored-turned-family at my place. Table groaned. Mark's chili upgraded with craft beer. David's lax. Crispy edges. John's pie. Jersey apple. Chris's vegan twists. Laughter looped old stories. New ones budding. Toasts to Robert. Absent but omnipresent. His mobile spinning lazy above. Catching candlelight. To flaws. I raised glass. And the love that mends them. Clinks echoed. Warm. After clearing plates. John lingered. Washing dishes side by side. He'd be proud, he said. Suds bubbling. I nodded. Drying a mug his chipped still. Of us. All of us. Outside. City hummed, sirens. Laughter. Life relentless. Robert's secret. Once dagger. Now compass. Love not linear. But labyrinthine. Betrayal not end. But inflection. In America's vast. Bruised heart. From Texas plains to Manhattan spires we navigate. Together. Flawed. Fierce. Finally free. Epilogue whisper. Spring again. Woodlawn blooming defiant. I visit the grave. Letter tucked in pocket. Worn soft. Miss you. Cowboy. I murmur. Rain holding off for once. Sun breaks. Horizon clear. And in the distance. Laughter, ghosts or guardians. Doesn't matter. They're mine now too.